Putin's Russia, fake economy, real propaganda forum. This is what we'll talk about today. As a former associate professor of several Russian universities, an economist, I can tell you straight away, this video would be different than any other video you watched on this matter, partly because I know what I'm talking about, because I am originally from Russia, and because I am an economist, which is, I'll tell you straightforward and straight away. Russia is basically a fake country with a fake history made up by the USSR and fake economy. So Russia, I don't even know if Russia ever had a real economy. Maybe in Tsar time. In the Soviet Union, there was no real economy in Russia. And many companies, which was government companies during the USSR time, they kept basically two sets of books. One is white set of books for the government, and another one, real one. And some of them didn't even have a real one. They only falsify and made stuff up. This is why so many foreign economists and so on fall for this trap that Putin says everything okay. That must be Russian economy is doing fantastic. This is why Russia closed a bunch of economic information. This is why Russia is lying about everything and making stuff up. This is why in a country who doesn't have a real economy, to have an economic forum is ridiculous. It's like oxymoron. It's something like, I don't even know what to compare it for in English. This is why in one of my earliest videos on this channel, and somewhere in 2022, which a previous economic forum happens in Russia, I told you this already. Like, there is no point to listen to Russian economy, about Russian economy or whatever they achieve. There is zero information in that. What I just showed you from Putin's speech when he is lying again. This is June 6. Putin tries to tell audience at his St. Petersburg propaganda forum that Ukraine strikes on local naval base merely hit some coal, causing some smoke. But this is a videos that Ukraine actually destroyed missile-carrying member of the Baltic Sea Fleet, Boyki. This is why there is no point to talk about economy in the Russian economy. So this video is not about Russian economy. We will talk about more important things. For example, guests. Putin's foreign asset, former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, members of German AfD party attended, American propagandists, an American actual official delegation, and convicted and indicted felons from America and the pedophiles, actual convicted felons, came to St. Petersburg during the 13th year of Putin's aggressive war against Ukraine. This is Mykolaiivka, Donetsk region, 2026. This is what Russia is doing to Ukraine every single day. Meanwhile lying, oh no, we're not hitting civilians, oh no. Meanwhile, Russia continues kidnapping Ukrainian children, bombing Ukrainian civilians and children in their beds, threatening EU and NATO, losing ground on the front lines and watching its fake economy crumble, all while promoting so-called family and traditional values. Ukraine strike military targets in St. Petersburg for several days, while members of the American delegation discussed future corruption schemes, including building a tunnel to Alaska. In the highly unlikely event that such a project succeeds, the Russian Tsar would have an easier route to his former Alaska colony, which he dreams of bringing back under Russian rule. Hello, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. So, while the Kremlin is holding this forum, business as usual, yachts, private jets, parties with champagne and caviar, basically a funeral for the Russian economy. Meanwhile, Russian GDP, according to economists who are thinking they know the facts, which Russia is hiding, it's probably way worse, minus 1.8%. Industrial production fell 0.9%. Inflation plus 15.6%. And debts for the wages plus 94%. Wow, fantastic. Part of my video will be based on this article. Steven Seagal, Candace Owens and Trump's ballroom commissioner appear at Russia's top economic forum. So, Rodney Mims Cook Jr. came to St. Petersburg. So, Russia propagandist forum in St. Petersburg. attended by US Commissioner of Fine Arts, Chairman Rodney Mims Cook Jr., an American propagandist and conspiracy theorist Candace Owens, an American actor Steven Seagal, who fled to Russia, a convicted sex offender, or basically a pedophile, Scott Ritter, showed up and threatened Europe. We will talk about it a little later. There is a controversy surrounding the appearance of notable Western figures, British-American internet personalities like Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan. Tate is facing ongoing criminal charges in the UK and Romania for human trafficking and sexual exploitation, attending the event to film content and hold meetings. Even in Russia, it drew harsh criticism from both Russian commentators and international observers. Cook, appointed to the government commissioned by President Donald Trump, is the first US official to attend the forum since 2017. His presence has been much touted by the Kremlin, which described him as a leader of the first official US delegation at St. Petersburg Economic Forum for many years. According to Cook, he had permission from Trump and the State Department to visit Russia. However, Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the Senate committee hearing on Wednesday that he was not aware of an official delegation attending, despite Moscow's suggestions otherwise. As Cook said, "I've been treated again in St. Petersburg with great warmth. Many in this room are personal friends over decades. I am here to listen and to learn." And this is what Russia did in Ukraine. So, learn what exactly? How to start an aggressive wars? Kill about 1 million of your people? British intelligence just confirmed 500,000 Russians dead. Absolutely confirmed. The figure provided from the front, including Putin's man Gubarev, who was one of the people who started the war in Ukraine in 2014, claimed that at least 1 million Russians are dead. These are total Russian casualties by June 7th, which is mean dead, wounded, missing in action, 1,373,620. In one day, 1,350. Some previous days I saw 1,500 a day. Is this what he came to learn? Cook's commission has been tasked with approving the rebuild of the White House ballroom wing and Trump's Triumphal Arch, a 250-foot monument in the style of Paris Arc de Triomphe that the president plans to build in Washington, D.C. He also showed images of some of the design plans for these projects. As a Canadian who has been in the United States many times and visited over 42 states, I wonder why? Why would he do that? To impress a Russian czar? This is so pathetic. I personally have been in a whole bunch of different palaces in Europe, in France, for example, from Louvre to Fontainebleau, in Russia, from Katerina Palace, the Winter Palace, and lots of other places, which is amazing. Petersburg, for example. So nothing what Trump can build right now can possibly match any of this. But apparently his representative feels necessity to show Russian Tsar, look, we're also building this for our king. Russia's war in Ukraine didn't come up during the panel discussion, but Robert Agee, president and CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce in Russia, said that the level of misunderstanding and mistrust between the two countries is an all-time high. Oh, really? I think Trump and his incompetent administration gobble Russian propaganda like there is no tomorrow. Trump is literally, personally, is repeating Putin's propaganda and saying how wonderful Putin is, how great relationship they have. So, no, it's all-time low. Agee spoke of a huge opportunity on the business front and said he'd been discussing projects worth trillions of dollars with Russian direct investment fund head Kirill Dmitriev for the past 4 years. This is Kirill Dmitriev, the guy who is basically lying to Trump all the time and to Trump's Witkoff and Kushner about how Russia is gonna sign the agreements and stop the war in Ukraine. So basically he's saying tomorrow we will have an announcement. We are signing an agreement to continue the design of the tunnel.
Поэтому тоннель будет, проектирование тоннеля мы делаем, и это будет одним из больших инфраструктурных проектов между нашими странами.
He's very optimistic. The tunnel will be built. As Natalka from Kiev posted, this is hysterical. So she explained and quoted popular Russian Z-blogger Zergulio, who responded to Kirill Dmitriev's announcement. So he even asked AI, Alexa, how to get to Chukotka where the tunnel gonna be built. You can read it for yourself. So there is no roads, there is nothing there to get there. But yeah, we're gonna build tunnel between America and Russia. Yeah, sure. Why would they do that? Oh, I'll explain you why. She said, can someone explain me, idiot that I am, what is it even for? Oh, I'll explain you what for. This is for, to like the Russians saying, when you're cutting the wood with a saw, saw yourself some money, some corrupt money, for you can split between few Russian and American oligarchs, and Putin and Trump pretended they're building a tunnel. And then they would say, oh, this and that, but the money spent, it's already lined the pockets of some oligarchs and so on. So this is a corruption scheme. Russia had many of those. One of them was famous Dragon Teeth in Ukraine, when they were supposed to build some sort of a defensive lines and this and that. Meanwhile, they just put garbage in there and spent the money and took the money for themselves. So this is one of those potential projects. This is Kherson, on about June 3rd. That's Russia not striking civilians. Oh no! So for the Agee, who is just announced Russian and American ice hockey players, that they will face off in Moscow on July 1st to coincide with 250th anniversary of US independence. Oh, apparently by the 250th anniversary, US threw their independence in the garbage and elected themselves a king. Well, this is what Russia does. But yeah, let's play hockey with the murderers. This is Russian strike on the ambulance on June 4th in Kherson. Yeah, fantastic. Wow. The United States, during Trump's administration, laid on the loser Putin completely. I'm surprised that Trump himself didn't show up in Russia to shake hands with Russian bloody dictator and with Taliban. This is a war crime, by the way. I sure hope that you don't think this is something new. As a person who have been researching this war since its beginning in 2014 and very well acquainted with Russian propaganda, I can tell you that there were plenty of stuff. And that's why I made my videos. This is one of the sources of my videos on Putin's assets. International Russian Conservative Forum. When Russia was need to justify its war in Ukraine in 2014, when it actually started, they had a forum for a whole bunch of ultra-right, ultra-left, basically Nazis, foreign Nazis, and so on, in Russia. And again, it was in St. Petersburg, by the way. So St. Petersburg has way longer tradition of Nazis marching on their streets, include foreign Nazis. The difference is, well, not much. This forum was mostly about teaching foreign Putin's assets, who were paid by the Russian government, which they took money from Russian taxpayers and paid foreign ultra-right, neo-fascist and neo-Nazi parties from a whole bunch of different countries to come to St. Petersburg for a forum where Russia would teach them their propaganda, teach them how to whitewash the war in Ukraine, which started in 2014, and at the same time how to destroy, destabilize their own countries. And this is my first video of the series of 3. One is on Europe and 2 is on the United States. This video is on the United States, about foreign assets of Putin. You're welcome to watch it, and in every video has a description or comments and that lots of sources used. So one of them was that Russian International Conservative Forum. So this is nothing new. Another colorful figure from the United States, Scott Ritter, convicted pedophile. He literally said that in effect Europe needs to be put down, like a rabid dog. And something has to be done about it, he said. This is not direct quote, but very close to the original. I watched this part of his speech and he's so proud of himself. He seems so cocky, so confident, talking to Russians and blaming everything on Europe, completely ignoring that it's Russia who started the war And everything he said about Europe directly applicable to Russia, not to Europe. But no, that's not a problem. It's Europe's fault that Russia attacked Ukraine and murdering people there every day for over 12 years. Another American political prostitute is Candace Owens, with her shiny propaganda tour of Russia. According to Jonas Kohler, and I agree with him, the only reason she can walk around safely is because she's acting as state propagandist. In reality, Russia is an incredibly dangerous and bad place for her. The Kremlin is giving Owens a massive platform because she tells them exactly what they want to hear. She is a propagandist for the Russian state. What she is hiding from her followers is that Russia is an intensely and increasingly authoritarian, sexist and racist society. An ordinary black woman would possess zero rights and find herself in the very bottom of the ladder. Domestic violence is normal and legally tolerated in Russia. She would also face daily racism. She loves to claim that Russia is safe, yet country has a murder rate higher than the United States, and significantly higher than Europe. It's also impossible to trust the authorities, who can arrest you as a foreigner at any moment. Besides being a Russian and knowing that the scholar is right, I can provide the facts and proofs. In Russia, racist neighbors beat up African-American woman who fled the US because allegedly of racism. Remember that? Francine Villa, a black American woman, listened to Kremlin's propaganda, moved to Russia, allegedly, as I said, because of discrimination against black people in the United States. Oh, Russian propagandists milked that story very well. And yet, guess what happened to her? You're welcome to watch it yourself. Russia Today filmed her.
I feel free in living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe.
This is how safe she is. Said, fist in my face. Somebody whacked her. According to Molly Miss, Russia doesn't do tourist visas for Americans right now. The State Department has a level 4 advisory, do not travel. So when real Candace O shows up in Moscow, calling it family vacation, so she showed up with children actually. Ask yourself, how does that happen? So she didn't sneak in, she was invited to speak on Putin's own economic forum, alongside Sanctions Russian state figures. The only way an American walks into Russia in 2026 if it's Russia opens the door. Nothing about this trip was a vacation, I agree. And what did she do in Russia? When I saw her pictures from Moscow and St. Petersburg, empty streets, nobody there, she posing for the pictures with her family. Really? You obviously haven't been in Moscow or St. Petersburg, if you can believe that, unless it's a Photoshop when they remove people from the picture. That never happens. It's not British Columbia, Vancouver. When I show up first time in Vancouver over 20 years ago, my first question was, where are the people? It was empty. It's several million people city, nobody almost on the streets. And my husband told me, people in the cars. Because in Russia the streets would be full, especially by the Kremlin and so on. So anyways, what did she do there? She had a meeting and talking about family values and how important family is. Meanwhile, Russia is bombing Ukraine, killing Ukrainian families and children. These two my videos, abduction of Ukrainian children and why Putin is a war criminal, explaining to people why Putin is a war criminal, why him and Lvova Belova, which is on this picture, who stole Ukrainian child and told about it to Putin on camera. That's why the Hague has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova Belova. So this is family values Owens is promoting. But this is not the end. On the sidelines of the conference, Owens questioned US support for Ukraine, telling reporters Americans are getting tired of finding and not knowing where the money is going. Apparently, during Biden administration, Americans knew exactly where their money for Ukraine were going. Here are my videos, why does USA help Ukraine, and especially this one, fighting propaganda about USA aid to Ukraine. So, but apparently Trump, who didn't even give money to Ukraine yet, now the money for Ukraine will go to the same American companies who produced weapons and create more jobs for American people, as it was during Biden administration. Most American money have never left the United States. This is why I made these videos, to disprove that nonsense. But Owens obviously didn't see my video, didn't watch my videos, and spewing Russian propaganda trying to prevent the United States from helping Ukraine. Please like, subscribe, share my videos, write comments, and let's make truth available for everyone. Now let's talk about German political prostitutes. Gerhard Schröder, I told about him in a video about Europe, Putin's assets in Europe, and some other videos, so you're welcome to watch it there. But I'm reminding you that in 2022, when Russia get to full-scale invasion of Ukraine, started the bloodiest war in Europe since 1945, when on Russian tanks was a big sign saying "to Berlin," which is, as you know, in Germany. Gerhard Schröder, behind the back of everybody, went to Moscow and lied that he went for vacation until his wife told the journalist that he came to some sort of a conversations with Putin, which, according to anybody, like public information, nobody asked Schröder to do so. And that's the same guy who is Putin's buddy, and Putin is proposing now make Schröder as negotiator for Europe. Good one. This article is interesting too. As to United States businessmen returning back to Russia, I'm reminding them a story of McDonald's. How did that work out, by the way? So let's talk about other parties. So apparently there were people from far-right European politicians from Luxembourg, Romania, and so on, as well as 4 members of Germany hard-right Alternative for Germany party: Peter Boystron, Markus Frohnmayer, Stefan Cotre, and Jörg Urban, as well as some Italian, Vittorio Torrembini, and so on. And even from Swiss, somebody, director of Association of European Businesses in Russia. Isn't Russia is claiming that they are against Nazis, and then they kind of have AfD representatives, Markus Frohnmayer, Stefan Cotre, and so on, as well as Schröder, as I said. And this is what Putin said about the AfD party.
I know that AfD is currently ranking first in the rating of political parties of Germany. It overtook the Christian Democrats, and they have made great leaps, and they are far ahead.
Putin is wrong, but AfD are literally taking Putin's money, and it's Putin's puppet. I agree with this channel. Putin supports the AfD. A vote for AfD is a vote for Putin and for making Germany a vassal of Russia. It's that simple. And in my video about Putin's assets in Europe I showed you, you can know more about AfD. Another charming character in St. Petersburg propagandist forum, Andrew Tate. He is an American and British social media personality, businessman and former professional kickboxer. And he kind of famous for such a insulting women and so on. More on his views. He openly declared that women should have no rights whatsoever except for serve men and bear children. Tate has also stated that the rape victims should bear responsibility for having been raped. Andrew Tate, who as of March 2025 is facing 6 legal investigations, 4 criminal and 2 civil, in Romania, the United Kingdom and the United States. So that's a warm greetings in Moscow for him and his brother Tristan. The legal cases against Tate based around allegations of abusing women. In Romania, he and his younger brother Tristan are awaiting trial on human trafficking and organized crime charges, accusing of exploiting 7 women. Andrew is also charged with rape. The Tate brothers are also facing possible criminal charges in the UK, where police have issued arrest warrants on allegations of human trafficking and sexual assault. 4 different British women have also served Andrew Tate with a civil lawsuit in the UK on allegations of sexual assault. So this is dressed up Russians. These guys are somewhere from Caucasus, it's not Russian even outfit. Giving him bread and salt, greeting them, the brothers and criminals, alleged criminals. Basically with highest honors in Russia. Every criminal welcome to Russia. In case you want to know more about Andrew Tate's criminal charges, this article is going into details. What else happened on Russia's propagandist forum in St. Petersburg? Basically not only just Putin, but several other people Russian authorities stated that the war isn't gonna stop. Putin will continue to kill Ukrainians and throw Russians into the meat grinder. They didn't say it that way, but they said clearly they not intend to stop the war. So forget about all that. Let's put Putin in the negotiation table. He's gonna stop. No. They continue deny Bucha's atrocities. And this woman keeps saying that again and again and again. Which is, Bucha wasn't something unique. Russia did it everywhere. In Crimea, in Irpin, in Izium. And it was 2022, for example. But in Crimea, they did it as soon as they took Crimea. They did the same thing in 2014 in Slavyansk. And I have a video about Bucha and Slavyansk as well. Russia presented its long-term geopolitical scenarios for the future. Good scenario means that Kiev, Odessa, Kharkov and other Ukrainian cities will be under Russian control by 2036. Good luck for stopping the war, as I said. A fully controlled buffer state on Ukrainian territory on annexation of Ukraine. The collapse of European Union. Good luck with that idea. Russia becoming global leader in security and geopolitics by 2050. So, Russia isn't gonna stop. This is what Russia wants. Russians consider the conquest of Ukraine and its complete destruction as a state to be a good scenario. This channel saying that he remembered how relatives from Russia for years explaining that Ukrainian person that a strong Ukraine is not beneficial to Europe, that Russia is not an enemy to Ukrainians, and who needs you stealing from you? And today, on an international forum, Russia openly demonstrates its intentions to completely destroy Ukraine, seize their cities, destroy the state, and make it their own. So it's an official Russian position. And the all territories, Donetsk, Lugansk, and so on, Malatak, Machka, Simferopol, they only want fully controlled puppet state of Russia. And some people genuinely don't understand why Ukraine doesn't believe them when they say they want only good for Ukrainians and why Ukrainians don't want to surrender. I hope after this video nobody would have a question about it. This man, Konstantin Malafeyev, that was an oligarch who was behind the attack on Ukraine in 2014 on Donbass, for example, and even paid some Russian bandits to go to Ukraine and grab the territory. So he stated that the use of nuclear weapons is a good scenario for Russia by 2036. So, good scenario for Russia is ended existence in a nuclear war. The good one. Putin said on the forum that they have to knock down drones. So, they're knocking it down by Russian military objects. This drone, for example, hit oil refinery in Krasnodarsky Krai. And another one in Antipensky oil refinery in Tyumen. So this is how Russian drones get knocked down, by hitting actual targets they were supposed to hit. And there you go. This is what happens when Putin's lies hit reality. Just when you thought these guys couldn't be any more stupid, Peskov comes out with this gem. The special military operation is continued precisely to prevent attacks like the one on St. Petersburg. Good one! I have lived in Russia for many years. I was born there. Nobody was bombing Russia, nobody was attacking Russia, and nobody was attacking St. Petersburg whatsoever before Putin started this war in Ukraine. You probably heard by now, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine, wrote Putin a letter. And he also said it's time to end this war. But Russian ruler wants to keep fighting. And that's why Ukraine had to apply sanctions against the aggression. And these sanctions are working. Last night, as he said on June 6, our drones covered a distance about 1,000 kilometers to St. Petersburg region, to the enemy's arsenals in the basin's Kronstadt. Our long-range sanctions also reached about 500 kilometers into Krasnodar region and hit an oil depot. These are important results of the joint efforts by the warriors of Armed Forces of Ukraine, Security Service of Ukraine, and the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. Russia must end this war and stop its attacks on life. Any manifestation of injustice against Ukraine will receive a just response. I think it's already clear to everyone that Ukrainians could have burned to the ground the clowns brought by Putin from all over the world at the gathering in St. Petersburg. And yet, Ukraine chooses military targets to stop the war and stop Russia from killing Ukrainians. So while Ukraine is not only defending its citizens from Russian unprovoked aggression, but us and our shared democracy as well, some foreign traitors crawled on their knees to Russia to praise a loser Putin. While Ukraine fights for its survival, these people choose to legitimize Putin's regime. I'm disgusted. How about you? On the bright side, everything changed the moment Trump walked away and Europe stepped in. Funny how that works. The European Union has mobilized over $75 billion in military support. Ukraine, the country everyone's supposed to be rescuing, is now exporting own drone technology into Europe. I would say about this 75 billion, basically only 40 billions would be on top, it would be new, the rest would be from what they decided before, and to give to Ukraine from the that loan, $90 billion loan, so on. And Ukraine is on the ground, systematically destroyed Russian supply routes and the land bridge to Crimea and some other territories, hitting over 125 trucks in May alone. Just trucks on fire. And the country that was supposed to fall in 72 hours, strangling Putin's crown jewel. They remember this day, when Ukraine finally celebrates victory. There will be a loser sitting in Mar-a-Lago and sulking. And J.D. Vance, Rubio, and Hexet won't be on the guest list because losers don't get invited to victory parties. That's just how it works. And this is how Ukraine is greeting their people coming from Russian prisons who were captured by Russia, Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians maybe among them, coming back home after the exchange. They must be very surprised to see that kind of greetings. And in Russia, the people who will be exchanged, they will be just thrown back to the meat grinder and definitely wouldn't get a glorifying meeting like that. Russians consider them the traitors that they surrender. They should have died. Ukrainians are happy that their people are alive. Learn the truth, stay informed, and help Ukraine as much as you can. Thank you for watching. See you later.